Hello, in this video you will see how I take apart a Atlas pasta machine completely, all the way apart. Clean it and re-lubricate it for many more years of use. My name is Jan Montarsi. I hope you enjoy this video. There are some other pasta machines in this video that I will attempt to rehab, but at this point I'm not sure yet. Enjoy the video. Hello folks, Jan Montarsi here. Today I'm going to show you how I take apart an Atlas pasta machine. Every brand is different. Atlas is the easiest to take apart. There's some cheap models that have metal long U-shaped pins that you have to put in. Those are a disaster. That's what you get with cheap machines. This is the old version. This is very old. It still has metal scraper blades, unlike the newer plastic ones. I bought 2 of these from a friend recently that's not going to be claying anymore. And I'm going to fix this one up and make sure it works good for my nephew. Anyway, you need basic tools. I have all these, and I will pull out the exact ones I use at the end of the video and insert the tools. Okay, just to go over this again, I'll put this at the beginning of the video. This is a 10 millimeter hex socket wrench. I have a screwdriver here that has a smaller Phillips and a larger Phillips. That's the plus sign. Okay, this is the rod that comes out of there. I use that for pushing paper towel out of the tube when we're cleaning it. A long bamboo skewer can helpful. And I didn't have to use these this time, but and the long pointy ones are better. But when you're cleaning out these tubes to pull out the paper towel, it may be helpful. But I didn't need them. And 90% alcohol. It's the only kind I use. The other stuff has too much water in it and it will rust your tools. So we're going to get ready to put this back together. Even though I'm putting this at the front of the video, I've already cleaned my machine and taken it all apart. So we're going to be putting it back together now. I have these sets of sockets. And there's only one socket you need, and you need a Phillips head screwdriver. That's all you need to take one of these apart. If there's anything else, I'll add it in the video. This is Taylor Lube. This is a food grade, heavy duty silicone food lubricant that's used in meat grinding machines and ice cream machines in the restaurant industry. And inside the rollers, there's black grease. So if you're going to take it apart, you might as well remove that black graphite grease and replace it with this. So that way you won't get black on your clay. Now, there's 2 things that make black on your clay. One is oxidation from the rollers. And I'm outside doing my video because it's a beautiful day. I've had a cold for 2 weeks. And I'm just going to be outside. So you may hear dogs, birds, and cars. But anyway, inside these rollers is a metal rod, and it has the grease that works its way out to the end of the pasta machine, especially if you're spraying liquids like alcohol down in your pasta machine, which you should never do. And it works its way out and comes out in your clay. The other is the oxidation, and that's just the air reacting with the metal, which you should clean before you start working, and have a block of translucent clay that you can just sacrifice to be a cleaning block. Keep it soft and sticky, add clay softener, and run that through your pasta machine to get the oxidation off every time before you work. This doesn't happen on the newer machines. And I'll put a link in the video to the new types of Atlas that have removable scraper blades. You can see the dirt up in this one. It's pretty clean, but I'm going to take it apart. Here we go. There may be some stops and starts. The first thing you have to do, this cap, to take it all the way apart, you have to remove that cap, okay? And I'm going to try to do this on camera. I can never get a tool in there to pop it out. This one actually looks like I could. This one I could. So I'll do this one. If you can find a spot to get a tool in and pop that cap, and there's what you have. You have a nut with a spring behind it, and that's what gives this the tension. Once I take this off, I never put the cap back on. Okay? The other way to remove a cap, because usually they're so tight on there, you can't get anything. I take a screwdriver, and not this part, I take the handle. And if on a downward angle like that, you just hit the edge, the cap will come off. I'm going to try it for you. Sometimes it takes a couple whacks. Nope, it's not working. Usually it's just one whack. Oh, there it goes. It started, you can see it started to come out. Once, if you can get it that far, sometimes you can get a tool in there and get it out. I mean, you don't want to destroy your handle knob, but that cap, I don't know why they don't have it be a removable piece. There we go. Harder than it looks. I mean, not as hard as it looks. These can be used for something, I think. So I'll put those off to the side. So now you can see this one's a lot cleaner inside. There's no rust, but there's a lot more use. I'm going to clean this one to give to my nephew because this one is older and she said it left more ridges. So I'll set that aside for now and I'm going to give him the better one. All right, so we got our cap off. Next thing you got to do is take the feet off. For that you need a Phillips head screwdriver, the plus sign. Okay? And I'm going to zoom through some of this stuff, but you just take these 4 screws out. Need a better screwdriver. That one's too tight. This one's probably too big. I actually have a specific screwdriver and a specific ratchet, and I usually keep them separate just for pasta machines. And you can also see on here, this machine was made in May of 1994, 05/94. That's the date that the machine was made. I don't know when they went to aluminum rollers. It wasn't that long ago, but they used to be all stainless steel. All right, I'm going to take these off and speed this up. Because in real time, you can take one of these apart in about 10-15 minutes max. Clean it, put it together. It should be no more than an hour probably. Feet come off. Base plate. Now, you're doing this the first time, take pictures all along the process so you know what you're doing. Now that plate really doesn't do anything. You could actually screw this into a table like that if you wanted, but so the next thing, we need to get it to take it apart so everything drops out of the center. So we need to take the end caps off, but you can see there's a screw behind there. Okay, 2 reasons we need to take this dial off. One is because it allows you to take both ends off, and 2, to get to that screw so you can take the end cap off. So let me find the right hex nut here, because that one. Is that it? I think that's it. And this is, oh, it's marked. I think it's 5/16. Loosen that screw. Okay, got the nut in there, and there's the spring. Do not lose this spring. Okay, you need that for tension. I'm working on a patio table. That's why I have towels down. I don't want to break my glass. Okay, so now we have a screw and a spring, and then the cap lips off. Now look at this. Before I take this off, all the holes are lined up. The peg is on there, and that's on number 1. And on this old Atlas, number 1 is the thickest setting. There is no 0. So number 1's right here. The peg is in the first hole underneath, and this is the center peg. I'll lift that off. Just remember how you put it on there. Okay. Now we can get to this screw. Come on. That is not the right. Need a smaller one. Alright. And sometimes they'll spin, but they're actually loose and you can pick them out of there. There, see, it's out. Screw. That lets this plate come off. Okay. Now we got one on the other end. There's the other one. Then this plate comes off. This machine is pretty nice and clean. Now I'm going to leave the fenders off of this when I get done. Here are the 4 foot screws that I left sitting off to the side. I want to keep it all together. Alright, still trying to see what that size is. I'm pretty sure it's 5/16. And of course, that's the one that's missing in my set. It's probably 10 millimeter, 5/16. Not a big deal. Okay, so now, this is what we got. This is the dial side, and you can see the cog wheels on this machine. And you can see a little bit of rust, but they're not worn down. They look in pretty good shape. All right, so what we need to take out next are these 2 bolts and these 2 bolts. And that'll let the whole machine come apart. So, is it this one? I'm going to find one with a measurement on it that fits so that you guys know which one it is. There it is. Okay, 10 millimeter. Oh no, it's not 5/16. That's too small. So it's 10 millimeters. I have all kinds of sets. That's it. 17/16 is the one that will work. There it is. 17/16. Okay. I'm making this much harder than it looks. That one didn't work. That one was tight. Okay, there's those 2 hex nuts. See, now that's turning because the rod's loose from the other screw on the other end. It is loose. There we go. Okay, so now that's everything you gotta take off. And then these just pull, wiggle it, everything just falls apart. See that? These are the housings. I'm going to leave those off. Totally unnecessary. And then, so what you have here is you have 2 threaded metal rods that the bolts came off. And those are covered by a stainless steel tube. Okay. And then here are the bolts. That's the piece off the end, and I'm getting grease on me. And then these have nuts on the inside. I'm going to leave those on the rods. And these go on the cogwheel side. Take this out here. Now I'm going to slide this apart. Underneath, those are the scraper blades with the dirty clay on them. This is a nice machine. But this is what you get if you don't have removable scraper blades. This is what gets in your machine and continuously comes out. And this clay is nice and creamy. I can push it and it smushes. That means this person who used this wasn't spraying alcohol down in their machine. Because what happens, if you spray alcohol in your machine, it gets down into this, it dries it out, and then it flakes off into your clay. It's worse than just leaving it there. All right. So here's the rod. Now, these rods, there's the second internal rod. This is the rod that's inside this cogwheel. And that's where the grease is. Okay? This is what pushes the grease out to the edge and comes out in your clay. You can see this is all sticky black grease. And this one's actually all stainless steel. I've seen them where they're like a pot metal or an iron color and they rust. This one's not going to rust. Okay. So now we got to get these cogwheels off. And they just pop off, usually. Maybe. But if you don't want to take those off, just leave them on. These are good. These cogwheels, that would be your tightest setting. And this would be a wide setting. And you can see, if you're on a wide setting and you're turning your cogwheels, they're just, the tips are passing by. And when you put thick clay through, it puts more and more stress. Whoops, I dropped my gum. More and more stress on those tips. And you can actually break a tip off or wear them down if you use the thickest setting to condition on. All right, I am going to get that oil off there. You can pry these off. I don't see the need to. I can clean everything here that I want to. I really want to get one off and show you. See one. I'm going to leave them. There's nothing wrong with them. There's no reason to take them off. But I am going to clean them. So now, it also keeps them in the right order for you if you leave them on there. This is the other end of those rods. The plastic housing is where the metal rod came out of. And the other one is the hollow one. This one just goes for the ride. This does all the work. This one goes for the ride. And my steel bar. And the steel bar with the threaded end is what comes out this hole and goes through your handle. All right, so now we're down to just cleaning. I'm gonna clean everything here. I'm gonna clean this one rod out. And what I'm gonna do is I have alcohol. I want to get all that black grease off. I'm gonna spray it inside of that tube. I want to let it set for a few minutes. I don't know if I can take this ring out. Nope. That ring is fairly thick. I'm going to leave it. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray that in there. I'm going to get in here with some paper towel pieces and push them through, back and forth. I'm going to get all that black grease out of that tube because I just don't like it. And this is probably the hardest part of cleaning it. I'm gonna try pushing it through the other end. There it is. See all that black grease? All right, so I'm gonna continue to work on that. Spraying alcohol in this tube and getting that black grease out of there. Okay, then when I come back, I'm gonna pack this rod with this lubricant, which is clear. It looks like Vaseline, but it's not. You can see it's clear. And if I get all that black out of there, I won't be having the black grease come out onto the clay anymore. All right, I'm gonna clean this up and I'll be back. Okay, so this is the side I'm cleaning, the inside of the tube. Just want to show you this again. I have about, this would be the biggest, trying to unfold it. That would be the biggest piece of paper towel I would put in there. Okay, and just feed it in and use a longer screwdriver than the tube and just push it down and then push it back. And you can put a couple pieces in, but just make sure they're small. But anyway, to get it out, if you're having trouble pushing it out the other end, usually if you use the original tube, you can get it right to the end. Give it a little shake. I can see it's right there, but I usually push it back and forth a few times. Okay, so I got it right there. Then if you take the threaded end, that usually helps push it out better. See, there it is. Then you can grab it. It may come out in pieces, but you will get it out. There it is. See, it's coming out cleaner every time I do this. So I'm going to do it a few more times. Okay, and get as much of that black grease out of that tube. And I will be back. I have several small pieces in there. Lots of juice. I'm just pushing them back and forth. I'm trying not to compress them into one ball, but just pushing them back and forth is the best that you can do. All right, now I'm going to try to push them out. This actually works the best. Okay, so I have a few little pieces still in there. I went and got a long bamboo skewer. You don't want to really compress it, but all that pushing back and forth that I did in the quiet part of the video helps get the grease cleaned out. And it's paper towel. If you don't overpack it and you keep it wet, see there it's coming out. You should easily be able to get it out. And your inside, you can see how clean that is compared to the first one. Okay, and that wasn't that long. It was just a few minutes of me pushing it back and forth. And I know there's still a piece in there. I can see it. But you will get it out. Just don't overpack it. You don't want a solid mass in there. You'll never get it out. But that's all right. This is, I mean, the whole point of this is I'm getting that black grease out. And I just kept spraying alcohol in there. It's not going to hurt anything, except maybe your hands. I think it came out. No, it's right there. There it is. You can see how clean that is now. I'm going to call that good enough. Okay, so now we're ready to, I'm going to set this aside. Actually, I'm going to clean it real well. All over. Down here where dust might settle. Just get it all good and clean. Try to get behind those cogwheels. We will be greasing those. You want to make sure you get anything that's out of here. And if you have a newer machine, you're going to have plastic washers there. But that's a place where clay will get built up on these. You can see it. You want something soft and flat, like a plastic credit card or a thin piece of food container plastic. Just, I don't want to put my screwdriver down there, but just to get down in there and clean around. And this is good too. A bamboo skewer. Not going to hurt anything. Help you get that clay debris out of there. All right. I'm calling it. Calling it clean. Okay, these are ready. I'm going to set that aside. Now, the next thing is the blades. These are really nice old stainless steel blades. This is what keeps your clay and sends it back through the hole instead of wrapping around. So I'm going to, let me open this piece of paper towel here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to press off what I can. But try not to bend or bow these. When these get dented, it's not a good thing. And I could just spray it with alcohol, but that's a lot of rubbing wet, juicy clay. So first I'm going to get it off with just dry paper towel and light pressure. They're not made like this anymore. The brand new machines have a high tensile strength plastic, and it's good and strong. But the previous version before that had they have like a plastic. It's just like this, but this part is plastic trapped in a metal handle, and they chipped. And if you got a chip in the blade, that wasn't good. You could get replacement blades, but it's always so hard to find stuff like that. Okay, so these are pretty much clean. I'm going to spray them with alcohol real good, and then I need to get a clean paper towel, and I will come back and wipe them down. And other than wiping down the other pieces like this, I'm going to give that a good spray right now while we're here. I want that to soften up and get that. The grease that's on this is like what they use in automobiles. It's a heavy diesel smelling, thick, pasty grease. And it's a good grease, but not on white polymer clay. Okay, I'll be back. So I'm just getting these things clean. Now, this machine seemed to have just that one type of grease, which is awesome. I've had opened other machines, and they have, the grease is like it has a black graphite powder in it, and it's really messy, and it's really puts a lot of garbage out on your clay. And it has a lot more inside the roller tube. All right, so this piece is clean. Just a few more wipes on my blades. I can feel a drag, which means there's still a little bit of clay residue on there. And get in here, in that little channel there. There's always stuff gets stuck in there. And I am using 90% alcohol. You can see here where someone dented that with a tool. Don't do that. Don't do it. Okay, now that's a little bit of rust. These are the tubes that cover the threaded rods. They're not really that dirty, just giving them a wipe. Gonna clean the cap just in case there's any grease in it. And I'll clean this bottom plate before I put it on. Here's one of the inner, this is the inner cover from the other end. See all that clay that's squished out of that hole? Okay, so that's, how's this go? That's what was up against this roller end. Okay? The new ones have a plastic washer at the end. And if the plastic washer is white, if it's white, you have the version of the machine that does not have the removable scraper blades. And I will put a link to my friend Sherry's video on her new pasta machine with the removable scraper blades, because it really makes all this pointless. You don't ever have to do this. The new version with the removable scraper blades, the washers, they're like little washer rings that you can see at the end of the rods on both ends, are black plastic. Okay, they'd be here and here. Sorry, here and here. So I'm going to clean this up. Looks like an angry face, kind of. Okay, that one's done. These are the outer caps. They're clean. There's a little bit of grease there. Get that off. All right, now I'm going to move all these tools away and pull out the ones that we actually used so you can see what they are. Okay, just to go over this again, and I'll put this at the beginning of the video. This is a 10 millimeter hex socket wrench. I have a screwdriver here that has a smaller Phillips and a larger Phillips. That's the plus sign. Okay, these are, okay, this is the rod that comes out of there. I used that for pushing paper towel out of the tube when we're cleaning it. A long bamboo skewer can helpful. And I didn't have to use these this time, but and the long pointy ones are better. But when you're cleaning out these tubes to pull out the paper towel, it may be helpful. But I didn't need them. And 90% alcohol. It's the only kind I use. The other stuff has too much water in it and it will rust your tools. So we're going to get ready to put this back together. Okay, I want to go over what we should have left out of our machine. We have the 4-foot screws, the 2 side panel screws, and 5 hex nuts. We have the 2 feet. And then I left hex nuts on the 2 rods. Okay, so there's actually 7 hex nuts. We have our cogwheel assembly, which the cogwheels are good, with the cleaned rollers. We have the threaded rods and the covers. Okay, 2 of those. We have 2 scraper blades. We have the cap. Okay, I lost my spring. Ha ha ha, where is it? So I'm missing my spring. Not good news. Oh, there it is. There's my spring. Keep track of that. Okay, we got our cap and our spring. We have the main rod that drives the pasta machine that also has the threaded rod that will come out to fit into your cap in that rectangle hole. We have the brace arm that covers the cogwheels. And then we have the inner cover plate, which, how you can tell which way these goes, the rounded over edge is what goes against the pasta machine. Okay, I'm just gonna let that sit there a second. And then we have the 2 outer plates which you can leave on, especially if you have a motor. You'll need this plate for the motor. Okay, actually this one doesn't have a motor. This one doesn't have a motor set up. So you can leave those off or put them on. Either way, that's your choice. I'll put them on. And then we have the two housing covers, fenders. The ones that one says Atlas. Sorry, the light out here is reflecting everything. Okay, I'm not putting those back on. Those would go right here. And you don't need them for anything, in my opinion. So, here we go. The first thing we got to do is oil the parts that need oiled. I'm using Taylor lube. And from cleaning this machine, okay, here's the plastic washer. Now this is the rod that goes through there. I'm going to just kind of stick it in there a second. So it'll need lubricant on that hole of the plastic washer. About a pea size I'm putting there. And I'm going to use this rod to push it back in the other way a little bit. Okay. And then you'll need some at this end. And it's actually really right here is the area that it is what rubs inside that other hole. I got it on there. I'll put this through. Get it out the other end. Take the excess off. Pull this out. And we'll get some on there and push it in this way. This can get a little messy, but I'm going to get some behind the cog wheel a little bit, and it'll move around, you know, on its own. Just get some back there. Now that's going end to end pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay. This is the arm. Okay. That covers these parts. Okay, where does it go? This way? Okay. You can tell on this model because it has two pegs that go there, fits over that rod, and there's the two holes for the screws, which are the threaded rods. And behind those are the other nuts that are left on here. I just want to make sure I have some grease in this hole. More on the back side of it. That's what I wiped it off of. And this plastic housing on the other base plate. Come in there. All right, I think that's everything that's greased. And I gotta move this camera. I'm gonna try to. All right, so we're gonna put this back together. That metal rod's in there. It can stay there. It's freely turning. There's no paper towel left inside. Okay, so we're gonna put these threaded rods with the nuts that were on them down through there. Okay. Then this part, make sure you take pictures as you go. Your machine could be slightly different. All right. So now I'm making sure the cog wheels, eventually they will be down where they need to be, because they have to be. Put the machine together. They have to be aligned. Both these rollers should be up against the plate, and those will be aligned. That will come into place. Okay, so now that we got this on and it's a little greasy, we're going to put our two hex nuts, okay, on this end. And this is the knob end. This is the knob end. Now, this is usually the end that people don't take apart when they're cleaning their pasta machines or taking the housings off. They just loosen the other end and pull the housings or the blades out. And you can do that for a quick clean, but I wanted to show you the entire thing. Okay, so here's my 10mm hex nut thing. I'm holding the rod below tight. I'm tightening that up just a little bit. I want to make sure, well, something's not going right. There we go. Okay, it's spinning in my hand because I'm all greasy. I just want to get it on there good. I would like to get those little tabs that come out, these little tabs right there, go into those slots. I would like to get them in place and tighten down at least some. Oh, come on. Okay, well, that's going to happen when it's tightened from the other end. Okay, I think we're good. So, the rods are through the support bar. Okay, the tabs from that are on the support bar are in their holes. These need to be pushed through their corresponding holes. Okay, and this is something you're gonna have to watch as we're doing this, okay? Because it has to go together right. I might have to loosen these up, but let's do the other end. Then we have our rod covers, and these are not just decorative. You need to have them on there. These spin when your clay comes out of the rollers, and helps a smooth transition. You could leave them off, but I don't think it's a thing to do. Okay, so this is our other end. This is our drive rod and our empty tube. And then we have our other housing. And you can see quite clearly which one goes on which. Smooth side with the rounded edge, not the sharp metal edge, goes towards the inside. Okay. Now, I don't want to over tighten this because we still have to get our blades. That's all the farther that goes. But I have all this other baggage here that's not tight yet. So we have these threaded rods inside of these tubes that need to get through there. And there's one, okay. I'm just wiggling it, making sure it's all together. I'm going to loosely, I'll turn this up in a second. I'm putting these hex nuts on the other end of the rod just so they're on there. Okay, they're just loosely right there. Because you don't want to put this all together and have to loosen it up to get your scraper blades. So your scraper blades, they're under the machine and they're like this. Okay, they're kind of like that. And they're resting with the blade, I can't get that on there, but the blade is on the roller. So if you're looking from upside down, you see this edge touching the roller. Kind of like that. That's what you should see. If that was a big roller, okay? But it's from the underside. So I'm going to get these blades in. There's slots for each one. Now see, that's kind of tight. Don't bend your blade. Don't risk. Loosen your machine up. If you can't, if it's not there, okay. So really, this point, if you take the end off that doesn't have the knob, you can get these out. Don't try to pry them out of there. That's the worst thing you do. You can see what a nice tight fit that is, okay? And I gotta do the other one. Get that in the slot. It's kind of hard to see. Okay, there's that. Trying not to bend it. It feels like I'm bending it. Did I bend it? No. This. If you feel any tension when you do this, stop. Okay. Now, there is a slight warp here. And I'm not going to try to bend it. I'm just kind of seeing if I can use a slight pressure because it was bowed in there. And all this is oily because my hands are greasy, but that's fine. It's clear oil. It will wipe off your clay. What is going on here? Okay. It's usually not this hard. I'm going to stand this up for a minute so I can get everything set. That's what it is. When the pieces are all loose and wonky, that's not good. Okay, and there is no right or left blade. Why is that so loose? All right. That is right. It's just because it's not tight. This is where you need a second helping hand, would be very nice, because you have to hold these in place because we got a good 1/8 of an inch to compress these. I'm going to just try to do this myself. I'm going to start tightening these nuts up a little at a time, making sure the tabs on the end of my rods are close to the holes. Tightening this is compressing the plates together because I have a gap in my tubes. So this just a little bit. You don't want to tighten it so much and have these bow. So I got to get them in the holes. And just for my own sanity, I'm going to switch which one's in which. Not that it should matter. I'll loosen that back up a little bit. Okay, now I got that one in and it's tight, but here's the trick. I got to get the other one in, which means I got to pull this back out a little bit. There we go. Okay, they're in. They're well seated. I'm bleeding. Everything's tight here. The rods are tight. Now, at this point, leave it like this. Swing it around. I got about 1/8 of an inch where that nut that's in this rod is not tightened up. And you might need one on the other side. Maybe that's what I was using this for. Okay, you might need one on this side. I'm going to use pliers to hold the nut on the other end of that rod still so I can tighten these. I'm trying not to get it super tight. And I hope you can see those other nuts are at the other end of the tube. I don't want to tip this. It's working good right now. So if you had two 10mm socket sets, you could do it with those. And I have another one because I have a whole kit of tools for this. I just keep separate. Because when I go to a retreat, inevitably I end up taking someone's machine apart for them. Okay. Now they're snug. I could tighten them more, but you see how all nice and lined up Your scraper blades are on the rollers. They're tight here, they're tight here. The rods are mostly tight there. The rod's in. This has pulled into the peg holes. This little square plate that comes off here has tab holes here. That's through. This side doesn't have any tabs. That's the only tabs. So everything's good and tight, and it's put back together basically. Okay, so now you can't turn that with your hand. You just can't. It's not, your hand's not strong enough. But there is grease in there. There's grease in there. There's a space here. Those cog wheels are out from the housing, about 1/4 of an inch. All right, so it's all put together. And you know what? All that cleaning, and there's a piece of clay. So we're gonna clean this when we're done, okay? Because I got greasy oil on it. But this oil and this lube is clear, for one. And the second thing is, if you have a dried out sheet of clay with like ink on it, you can rub a thin layer of this on it and let it sit, and it'll soften it up. But it's a lot of work for the money. But it's not gonna hurt the clay. All right, so I'm gonna tighten this up some more. Make sure I'm happy with that. Okay. You can over tighten these. Pasta machines should have, I don't know if I can show you, should have a little bit of flex. You shouldn't be able to twist it, but when you're using it, like if you screw this down like it is and don't put the bottom plate on into a piece of wood, some people do that, and you tighten these down so tight and there's no flexibility in the machine, it can actually wear out your machine. All right, so I'm gonna put this part on, and I really shouldn't do it until I am happy with the tightness of my machine, but I can loosen it from the other end. So we're gonna put this part in. So I'm gonna turn this so it's that way, and remember before, this was like this. Number 1 was facing the top of the machine. The slot was like this, and the last hole on that end, which is, there's nothing there, no numbers. It's opposite from like maybe between 3 and 4. That was on that little peg right here. Okay, then we have our spring, and then we have our last nut. Now, I leave this off. Push that spring down. Okay, I don't put the cap back on here because when I want to take this apart the next time, I don't want to deal with it. The only thing is, and I see this also, you want to check that bolt every once in a while. And it can be just, you know, snug, but because it doesn't do anything with spinning. You want to keep your eye on it that it doesn't work its way off, because it can do that inside the cap too. You ever see people post that there's something rattling in there? Well, that's what it is. This worked itself off in the spring and that, and then they pop it open and they lose the spring and they don't even know it was there. All right, so here's all this. Okay, that's where my handle goes. I'm going to try it real quick. Yay, I have a pasta machine that works. Okay, I'm going to check this. Make sure the rollers are coming apart. And sometimes you got to do a whole turnaround to get them lined. They have to get like set. So that is 1, 2, 3, and they are opening. 4, 5. I'm looking at what's straight up. 6. Oh, that was 7. And looking through that tight setting, it looks perfectly, the space is perfectly even. Let me go up to something else. There's 3 to 4. Still, end to end, the gap is even the whole way down. That's good. There's 6. Now, different densities and clays can make things come out longer on one side. I always use the full width of my pasta machine. If you see any of my blend angle, triangle kits, I have them on createalong.com, but I have videos for how to use them, to use the full length of your pasta machine. You'll get the best blends. All right, so this is all working. We're happy. The handle goes in, it turns. It turns, sounds good. The cog wheels sound good. They're lined up and working. Yeah, this is good. Good machine. Okay, now that's rattling a little. That's fine. I'll probably maybe tighten this just a little bit. Oops, wrong tool. It's really not going anywhere. Still gonna say they move. This one's really tight. I actually might loosen that one a little bit. So, where my last part of the video stopped, I didn't realize my camera went off. Sorry for the car noise. But the machine was all put together, except for putting this housing on, the other side housing, and both of those just go on with that little screw. And then I put the feet on. Okay, I put this on, and I forgot to put the legs on, and they go underneath those screws. So I'm gonna take that apart and try to reshoot that little part, but really that's the most basic part. Anyway, I'll be back. I'm gonna take it apart to that point. Okay, so my video stopped. I hate using a phone to make videos. I usually use my big iPad. But anyway, where I was before, I was right here. I took everything back off of it. The only thing I didn't is this side plate. This side plate just has one screw. These are really just protective and decorative. Okay, so what I did was I had to take this knob off because this knob has to go on the outside of the plate. So here's our cover plate. Okay, and this cover plate has a little tab that sticks out. That's the arrow for the dial. So that just goes on there so that it's seated well. Your other long screw. And you want to try to get them in the hole straight so they catch the hole on the other side. This one is actually made very nicely that it just goes in there, and I will show you why. And it's not that far to screw. See how this hole is bumped up? So that acts like a funnel when you drop the screw in. So most of them are just a straight hole in a flat piece of metal, so you have to find the hole. Okay, the next thing is putting this handle back on. So I have this back on. The hole that's across from number 3 and 4 is going on that peg, and this is vertical. Okay. Got my spring, my hex nut. I'm going to use my tool to tighten it up. Forget to turn that. Okay. That's tight. 1 is my thickest. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so everything's working. It's all done. Now all I got left to do is put the feet on. Easy peasy. Turn it upside down. I did clean this plate. It's all greasy again. Get this seated right. Look at it both ways. Sometimes the holes line up better one way than the other. Put your feet on. And these have a bar right here, okay? It's on both sides, but you can see how this is more inside. I put the corner pad where the pad is, if you have this type, out to the edge. Because if you put it that way, it doesn't fit. Okay. Got my 4 screws, 3, 4. I gotta hurry up. Looks like we're gonna get rain. When you start screws like this, just get them started. Don't try to tighten one all the way down. Just make sure it's seated in the hole and moving. And then after you get them all in, go back and tighten them up one by one. Oh, seated right, there we go. Oops. Uh-oh. Somebody got away. I got him. Okay, so that one's in. They're all in. I'm just going to go crisscrossing. Just getting them till they're just snug. And then I'll go back around the circle again and make sure they're tight. Ta-da! You are done. Now, once you do this once, it gets a lot faster. And like I said, you can take off the base plate and just this cover plate, loosen the bolts there if you want to drop your blades out, and clean just your blades and then put it back together. This heavy duty cleaning where I take it all apart, I don't have to do that very often. It's very rare. I'm talking years. But if you ever think you need to put lube in, you got to take this other side off. But this one is good to go. I can't wait to try some clay in it. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I will answer them. It may not be in 5 minutes. But there you go. Atlas pasta machine, the best you can get for polymer clay. And like I said, if you have a cheap one and it has these U-shaped long metal wire things that you have to press in from the side, I just threw mine away when I had one of those cheap ones. I could never figure out how to get the wires in, and it just wasn't worth the aggravation. And I will leave a link to an Amazon store for buying Atlas. I actually recommend the 150 over the 180. I like the 180, it has a little bit more. These are 5 3/4 inches. The 180 is about 7 inches, the rollers. But it's just my belief that that extra length causes more torque and twisting and wears your pasta machine out faster compared to that shorter one. That's just my theory, believe it or not. But I will put a link to that Amazon store. It's the official Marcato Atlas store. They usually have Atlas 150s by themselves like this. They probably don't have the motor plate, but that's something you can buy later if you want to get a motor. They're about $69, but I see them as low as $55 to $69. The price changes every other day. But it's your most likely chance of getting the ones with the black washers at the ends and the removable scraper blade so that you don't have to take it off. There's just a pin under there. You push the pin to the side, the pin pops out, and your blade comes down. And I will put a link to Sherry Bear. Sorry. I'll put a link to her video she is demoing her new removable scraper blade machine. Okay, I'm back for a minute. This is the machine I just finished in the video, taking apart. I'm going to time taking this one apart and just let you know, this being my second one today, how long the time was. But I wanted to show you a couple things here. First of all, look at this machine. There's 2 screws in this one. There's only one in this one. Okay. You see the other end. There's two screws for the plates. This is the one I just did. This is the one I haven't done. Also, on the bottom, the one I did first was from May of '94. This one is from October of 1983. So it's 11 years older. And I tell you what, the weight of this one, even with these, I bet there's another 1.5 pounds of steel in this one. It is so much heavier than the one I did from '94. So I'm not going to video it. This has metal scraper blades. I see a little bit of rust, but it seems like a good machine. And I mentioned that link that I'm going to give you. I am going to give it to you. You don't ever need the attachment that makes spaghetti cutouts. If you buy a machine with that, you're paying $75 to $100 more for that, which is nothing. You don't ever going to use it. If you ever buy one off the internet or something, and they have that, and they're going to charge you actual shipping, tell them to leave that part off, because it weighs a ton. All right, I'm going to take this one apart after I give it a shot, because I haven't even tried it yet. I just picked these up the other day to make sure it doesn't sound broke. Wow, it sounds broke. We'll see when I get in there. It's moving now. I don't think she used it much, but it's always worth the risk for 15, 20 bucks. See if I can fix it. And I may need new cogwheels. One other thing. On the bottom feet, you can see these are not screws like the other one is. These have little hex nuts, so I will be able to use one of my little sockets to remove those feet. I can't fix it right now, but these little hex nuts instead of screws. And there's a piece of clay. Alrighty. These are some still shots from the second pasta machine after I got it open. It had pasta in it, dried up in the side panels. There was a lot of rust on the ends, on the cogwheels, as well as inside the tubes of the rollers. It took a lot of cleaning. I didn't think I'd be able to save it, but in the end, I was able to. I was able to go buy the tool to remove the cogwheels, and then I was able to fix it, and I'm hoping that it's a good machine because it's very heavy and of good quality. I will let you know the outcome of this pasta machine and whether I could save it by the end of this video. Don't forget to like and share. You can also see there, this is the cogwheel behind it. Look how worn and scraped that metal is. That's from years of trying to use it without any oil in it. If I can get these cogwheels off, they look pretty good. They just need a brush, but they don't look worn. I think everything had to do with somebody must have been washing this in water for all the grease to be gone totally. Good morning, folks. I'm back with machine 2. Now, I know I told you I would tell you how long it took me to take it apart and put it together, but I would have to say more than a day. There was a lot of rust in this machine. Things were corroded. I had to clean the insides of these roller rods. They were full of rust. Whoever cleaned this must have dunked it in water. I have lubricating oil inside of these right now, and I've cleaned them out. I used this brush, and I used Lime Away, which is a rust scale remover. And everything that had any rust, after I sanded it with 400 grit sandpaper like these rods, and I lubricated them with Tailor Lube. Everything that had any rust spot. These are the cogwheels, and they do come off. They unscrew. On cheaper machines, there's a little ring that you pop out and they push off. But so I had to go buy a tool, this socket, and these were on the ends of the rods, and I'm not going to put it on there now, but this socket exactly fits all the points of these, and it doesn't look like it does now, but when you put this on and turn it, it exactly fits that. So that was a nice thing I learned from Ed Street. Ed Street is edscolors.com. He's the person who makes all the custom colored Atlas pasta machines. I have one. They're very nice. They come on an acrylic base, and they're custom colored with a heat set enamel process that he does, and it doesn't chip off or wear off. They're very nice. Anyway, check him out. I'll put the link in the comments. So I'm going to put this together on camera. I was going to have this as a speed video with no sound, but I think narration is better. Blades, I cleaned them, I lubricated, I put them in a bag just to keep them safe. All the parts have already been cleaned and are ready to go. The rollers for the covers for the rods, I couldn't save. They were too bad. So for temporarily, I'm going to cut drinking straws so we get some spin on the support rods. Somewhere I know I have an old machine I can take them off of and use them, but I'm just not doing that right now. After that, I'm going to try both pasta machines with polymer clay to make sure they're okay for use. I'm happy to say I was able to save this machine. The rest of this video is the assembly process after I spent a lot of time cleaning and removing rust from the machine. Enjoy this process. Back of the machine. You can see at the beginning here, I'm having trouble figuring out which end panel goes on which side. I do figure it out though. But that's why you take pictures along the process. Oh. I was putting them on the wrong side of the panels. Remember, the curved edge of the top of the panels is on the inside next to the rollers. No. So I picked up the drive rod, which was sanded, and I put it in the correct tube. Then I was able to figure out my mistake. That's still the wrong one. There we go. Yes. That's where it goes. And you see then I'm able to put the cogwheel on. Yes. The cogwheels are threaded. I had to use a special tool to remove them. You can see the large ratchet socket at the top of the screen on the right. It's a Husky 1 1/16 inch socket wrench, and it fits the cogwheels perfectly and allows you to remove them. It took a little bit of soaking with WD-40 and a little strength to get them off, but once they came off, they were easy to remove and put back on. There I'm using the socket wrench to tighten them. And you want to put this one on first. This is the one that has the rod that goes inside of the tube, because when you go to put the second one on, it has to be higher so that you can get your wrench on it. This is the one that sits higher as you're working with it. Eventually they come together. But if you don't have the other one on first, they interfere with each other while you're trying to use the ratchet. And it was actually easier to use tape and tape the two rods together in the right position when I took them apart. because you have to have something to grip onto. I'm applying lubricant to the ends of the steel driver rod. This is my Taylor lube. I use a lot of it. It won't mess up with your clay, and it's pretty heavy duty and lasts a long time. Okay, so I got the 2 cog wheels on the ends of the tubes positioned on the right end plate. And I'm putting the drive rod, that's what I call it, inside the tube, so it comes out the other end of the cog wheel. Okay. Now that whole end is in place, putting a little extra Taylor lube on the cog wheels. In between the threads, it'll work its way through where it needs to be. Then I'm getting ready to put on the other end of the plate, curved edge towards the center of the pasta machine. And I'm going to feed the rods through.
That ain't right.
And then I gotta make sure it fits tight. Everything looks good. Now we have to put on the threaded rods. And I didn't save the tubes that cover the threaded rods for the support rods, so I decided to cut some plastic straws to use as a cover. And the only reason I have them, I like the clay to kind of roll across them. And these old rods being rusted before, even though I sanded them clean and put lubricant on them, I think it's just better. And I cut my straw too short, so I had to cut another one. Make sure the nut that was left on the rod goes on the cogwheel end of the plate. So you see me putting the new straw on, feeding the threaded rod, support rod through the other end of the plate and putting on the nut. Just hand tightening it to get it to just be snug enough to hold the rollers so they don't fall out of the base plates, the end plates. Now I'm going to put the other rod on the other side after I cut a straw for it. So I cut my second straw and I'm putting it on the threaded rod, but make sure that your nut that's on the threaded rod is at the cogwheel end of the machine. And I'm putting my straw on, and I'm going to feed that through the hole and put the nut on the other end. There's a certain amount of space that you need on the cogwheel end of the nuts because you're going to be stacking a second nut on top of that when you put the protection bar that covers the cogwheels. I had to adjust that later on because I screwed them too short on that end. But there we go. We're basically put together. It's loose because I still have to put the scraper blades in, and that's the next step. Okay, so it's put together loosely. I'm turning it over in preparation for inserting the scraper blades. My scraper blades were heavily coated in Taylor lube, so I had to spend a minute really wiping them down and getting the excess grease off of them. I was more worried about it for the inside of the blades that'll never get cleaned for a while. Okay, now they're both cleaned, and I'm going to insert them, putting one peg into the end wall. I have to loosen it a little bit because it's too tight. The whole point of keeping it all together is so the roller rods don't fall out. And these you have to be careful with. Don't force them. You're better off to loosen it up a little bit. You don't want to bend your blades or they will be worthless. they went on actually much easier than I thought. So there they are. Give it a little wiggle. I always wiggle it once in a while. It kind of snugs everything and puts it in place. I'm going to tighten the threaded rods on both ends, and I'll have to check later to make sure I have enough threaded rod at the cogwheel end so that I can put the second nut on that rod. And I'm going to use my small socket, my 10mm socket, to tighten the nuts on both ends as soon as I find the right tools. And then I'll use a pair of pliers see, it's a little wonky still, giving it a wiggle, making sure my bar's in place. And I'm looking for my pliers. There they are. And I will hold the nut on one end, the pliers, and then tighten it on the other end, just till it's snug. I can tighten it a little later, and I do have to adjust it later on. I'll do the second one. If it's over tight, your roller rods, when you put the handle, won't turn. They'll just screech, rubbing against the metal. And I really think that's part of the problem with pasta machines when they quit working. If the cogwheels are okay, then it's because it's just gotten all wonky because it's either too tight or too loose on the support bars. Okay, I'm happy with that for right now. My blades are set in. Everything looks good. And my cogwheels have come together level. Just looking it over. There's no gaps at the ends of the rollers. And you can see my space between the rollers is uneven. And that I figured out is because there's nothing wrong with it. It's because I don't have the support bar that covers the cogwheels. They kind of keep everything together at the wide end where you see the space. So that I figure that out quite quickly. And what I do suggest is after you put your cogwheels on, before you put all the other steps of the threaded rods and the blades in, go ahead and put that support bar that covers the cogwheels on. And I am coming to that. I just thought of it. Right there it is. And that's why that gap between the rollers was tight on one end and loose on the other. That's kind of like a regulator bar. It just keeps it in place and doesn't allow the rollers to be at different widths. So I'm working on that. I needed to loosen things up a little bit again so that I can get that, I want to call it a regulator bar, but the bar that covers the cogwheels. I needed a little more play to get it in place. And I'm going to speed this up a little bit to get to the point where I have that on. After some loosening and tightening of the bars, I now want to check and make sure the drive rod that's inside the tube is turning. And I have it faced the right way. I deleted a bunch of fiddly video, and we're back to the point where I'm trying to get this in the right position. Those two little prongs have to go down that are on the square box end of the support bar, and it has to go on the other end. They both have to fit on threaded rods. This probably should have gone on first. and it's still too tight for me to do that. I need some play. So I'm going to play around with the loosening and tightening the rods again. I finally got it on. It kind of just all of a sudden went into place. Just a bunch of wiggling. Now I'm putting on the nuts and tightening them down on this end. So this end has 2 nuts on each rod, one below the support bar and one above the support bar. Checking the turning of the rod. It's very hard to do with your fingers. I'm going to put in my pliers and just make sure that it turns, and it does. It doesn't feel like you can turn it with your fingers. But everything's lubricated nice and well. Now I'm going to do a little more tightening. This is my final tightening. So I'll be checking this, tightening them, making sure the blades are not wiggly too much. They wiggle a little, that's fine. I want to make sure the machine looks straight and that everything is tightened enough. I also am now going to put this dial cap on, and I will have to take it off again. I do it every time. But in the end, I left the end plates off this one for another reason. So I'm going to put this on, but I actually like to put it on until I do my final tighten for my support rods, because it kind of needs to be there when you're setting the support rod tightness. Because once you're done and you put those outside end caps on, if it's too tight, you have to take it apart anyway. So that's on. Now, basically, I could put the handle in and use this at this point and make it work. I'm checking the width of the rollers as I turn the setting knob through the different numbers, and everything looks good. My number 1 on the dial is in the correct place for the widest setting of the rollers. If that ever happens that you put your cap on and it's closed tight, turn the drive rod a half a turn and then put it on. That seems to help. Now I'm looking at, see, I gotta take that back off again, which in the end I didn't really need to, but you'll see why shortly. Watch the spring doesn't fly when you take the bolt off. If you don't have that spring, you don't have the tension that keeps the dial in the right position.
And it kind of pops in there.
Okay, putting my end cap on. Now here's the problem. These screws, there's 2 of them on this older machine. One's short, one's long. I wasn't quite sure which one went in which hole. But after looking at it, the longer one went up on the top edge, and the shorter one went in the middle. And that's because of the thickness of the metal. But the problem I had, because I left the housings off, and I'm going to skip to that now. So the problem I had is the pointy end of the screw is sticking out, where when you're working with your clay, you can scrape your finger on it. And by leaving the fender housings off, I at this point just decided to leave the end caps off too, so I don't have those screws. I did try reversing them, but it didn't work. So I just in the end left the end caps off. Okay, I have it back together. I think it's a little too wobbly. I'm going to tighten it up, but I'm going to leave these houses off of this one, at least this one, because when it had the fenders on, it covered these pointy screws. The long ones that I had fit at the top, and the shorter ones at the bottom. But if I leave them there, they're very sharp, and I don't have a saw to cut those off. So I'm going to take off the housings that are unnecessary. So the housings are now off, and I can tighten it up a little bit. It just felt a little loose anyway, so I'm glad I had to take it apart. Still seems a little flexible. There's a fine line between having it too tight and not tight enough. So once I get this tightened up, I'm going to replace the dial with the spring and nut on the end, and then we'll be ready to put the base plate on. Here I'm just trying the handle temporarily to make sure it sounds good. No. It's too tight. So now I have to loosen it up again. Just a little bit. Try the handle again. And it's still, I think, a little too tight. So I'm going to loosen the nuts again. And you have to hold the other end of the nut, other end of the rod nut, because it just doesn't go anywhere. You're just turning it in place. I'm not really a tool guy. Okay, now we're going to, it still feels firm enough. Try the handle, and it's moving fine. It looks good. Okay, now it sounds and feels good. Time to put the dial cap back on. And it's a little out of place, so I have to put it on and turn it so that it's in the correct position with the number one on the dial and the rollers at their farthest space apart. If you put the cap on and it's tight closed and it's on number one, you need to spin the drive rod a little bit so that you can get it at the widest point, and the number one is facing up. Adding my spring and my nut, and on this machine I'm going to leave the cap off. That way I can always check it, and if I have to tighten it, I will. Same thing with the threaded rods. If they loosen up over time, I like not having the end caps on because I can just tighten them up if I need to. Everything's working fine with the dial. The handle sounds good. Cranking sounds good. We're just about done. Okay, so now we're going to put the base plate on. I put it on one way. Looks good. find my screws. And these are the ones that had the hex nuts. And there I go, trying to start it without putting the feet on. Placing my feet, the rubber corner at the edge. There's only one way to put them in. You can tell instantly if they're backwards. I'm going to seat all the screws and tighten them down. Okay, all the foot screws are in and tight. Everything seems good. Now that added a new level of tension in the machine. Just trying the handle and it sounds great. Checking the settings on the dial one more time to make sure number 1 is large and number 7 is tight together. And everything seems to be okay. We're done with putting this one back together. It's ready to use. It's all together. It seems to be working fine. Doesn't sound like anything's clunking. It's moving slowly. There's a fine line between way too tight with these 4 bolts. You want some flexibility. It has to have enough looseness that the rollers turn freely, but it has to be tight enough that everything's held in place. So I kept playing with those adjustments. You saw I had to take this off multiple times, but I think it's good. I got a lot of oil inside of these tubes, so it will be coming out for a little while. I mean, it's going to quit running, but this thing is very greasy. I am going to clean them up, and then I'm going to run translucent clay through both machines. And I'll probably have to set up for that somewhere else so that you can watch. All right, 2 good pasta machines, 35 bucks and a little bit of work. And the whole process of putting this together, video time, because I stopped it if I had to leave, like I had to go get straws. These are McDonald's straws. And I had to run out to my car to get one. I do have a whole collection of straws that I use for all kinds of things, all different thicknesses. But the whole time for this was 35 to 40 minutes putting it together. And that's what I say. You know, I've done it many times in the past. It's been a long time since I did one. Figuring out the order of operation. Get these metal tubes on. I had to put the cogwheels on and tighten them down with my tool. But getting these rods in the right place, I had to think about it at the beginning of where everything went. So that took a few minutes. But once I got the cogwheels on with these 2 rods, put the metal rod through that comes out here, and got these in place. I then put the tension rods that hold it all together in loosely. Then I put my blades in there. Then I tightened it up. And I think this metal bar that covers the cogwheels, I probably should have put that on before I put these rods on. So but once I got that in place, the whole machine just seemed to come together. Yay. Okay, I'm going to clean them both up and run some clay through them. So here are my 2 clean pasta machines, number 1 and number 2. Number 2 has the plastic straws. This was the worst one. These are the clamps that come with them. I really don't like them. I'm going to use them for this demo, but I want to show you actually how I normally clamp one down. I usually have it at the end of my table, which I don't want to really move this here. Let me move the table a little bit. I put it at the end of my table. So I'm sitting here, and I have it at the corner end of my table. I'm going to show you back here for the camera view. Get out of the sun. So I take a block of wood. The block of wood sets there. That distributes the pressure of the clamp to the whole length. Because when you use these, and you're hitting that one point, you get rocking. And it's the wrong direction if you're sitting in front of a long table. So put your pasta machine at the edge of the table, block on the table. This is the clamp I use. It's called a Bessey, B-E-S-S-E-Y. I'm not sure what size this is, but you can see it in my hands. It's probably 10 inches long from here to here. This slides, so it's a nice wide gap. Has a rubber top, and it'll go under the table like this. Okay? Now, if I'm working on a plastic folding table, like a banquet table, I will put a piece of, I have some other wood blocks, I'll put a piece under there, but this is my dog grooming table, and it's wood, so it'll be fine. So anyway, that's what that looks like. And what I like about these Bessey clamps, you can push that lever and pull the bottom up, and it's there, and then you just tighten the knob to get it good and tight. But for the demo, I'm using the other clamps. I'll be back. Okay, so I got my two machines clamped to my table. Because they are the old steel rollers, they're going to have oxidation on them every time. I've already cleaned them once, so I may not get any. But I spray a paper towel with alcohol, and I still got some off. That's just because of the steel rollers. That's what they do. But I get off as much as I can. This one may have more. Both machines seem to be working well. Okay. Then I have my sacrifice clay. This is a block of Primo white pearl. Very soft. So I'm going to run it through. I need to put the other handle on this other machine. Okay. Normally I would cut it thinner than this, but I just wanted to see how much pressure it could take. Both of these sound good. Okay, that's on the thick. I don't usually condition on my thick. It's the weakest point, but I know I got my cogwheels are in good shape. I'm making sure my clay gets down to the ends of the rollers. I want to see if I get any gunk out of the ends. Every pasta machine will have a better setting for making even sheets. You can see this one, the tongue's coming out in the middle, mostly. So if I'm making blends, my sheet will probably be good. Now, it's got a speck of dirt, but that was from the table. So if it's wonky on, there's a little bit of schmutz that looks like oxidation and not grease. Coming out pretty good. All right, I'm gonna go down to a number 3 setting on both. I don't see any dirt coming out. Now this older one, I put some oil inside the tubes, and I don't remember if I dumped out any excess. So over time, I may get some coming out, but typically it would go out to the ends past the rollers. Okay, so now I was on 3. I'm going to go down to 5 on both machines. Oops, the handle fell out. Five is very nice. We'll cut this in half. It's so nice out today. I'm going to go to 7. Now I'm going to just lay this 1 layer thick on the rollers. And if you're going thin, I always go fast. It wrinkled a little bit. But I was able to go through the 7. It's like thin fabric. This is where you end up getting air in your clay because, I'll go back to a 5. When it's that hard to handle, so I'm happy with this machine. This is the one I'm going to send to my nephew. You can hear the little pops. I'll deal with getting air bubbles out later. I want to go down to 7 on this one. And 7 is the thinnest setting. Press it against my rollers. See, that's why I like to have the straws here. Now it's sticking to my rollers at a 7. That's weird. I've only ever had that happen with Kato. But even still, if this was translucent, I got little schmutz there, but if this was translucent, I would be able to get a very thin sheet. Awesome. All right, these are good enough for general purposes and classes when I teach. Now I gotta clean them again. I just wanted to say again, well worth the time. $35 for both these machines. About 2 hours of real work. And they're great. I keep getting annoyed by somebody named Bill. Anyway, very happy with the machines. $35 for 2 machines, about 2 hours of real work. I would probably keep one of these for white clay only. But I have now about 12 machines, Atlases, that I use for when I teach classes. Especially with new people, they don't have pasta machines. And it's always good to have backups. All right, I hope you all enjoyed this. Please like and share. If you have time to let a device run with my video playlist on my channel that you're not using on a particular day, you could really use the watch time. Thanks again.